Debugging the camera. Today we're going to combine everything we did in the previous videos, and we're going to create a tab that lets us debug our camera. Or in this case, we're simply gonna have a tab that contains a bunch of sliders that lets us adjust all the variables of our camera. But let's do this. Okay, so in Unreal I'm going to go in the player and open my BP pawn. Here you can see that I changed the code a little bit in between the videos, but I didn't change any of the logic. I simply took a bit of time to add a bunch of comments here and there, and also to align all the pins in a cleaner way. Okay, let's do this. So if I zoom right here, we can see that we add a bunch of hard-coded variables. Let's say speed for the zoom, speed for the location, and speed for the rotation. But we're going to change that, and we're going to create a bunch of variables for all of them. So on one side, it's going to be more clear what they represent, and it's also going to let us edit them in-game, which we can't do right now. So let's do this. I'm going to start from the bottom. So I'm going to right-click on the yaw of the rotation right there and do a promote to variable, which I'm going to name rotation underscore speed. Then since we are using the same value for the opposite rotation, we're simply going to copy this node right there. So we are going to use the same variable and I'm going to invert it. So I'm going to search for minus, so float minus float, and I'm going to connect it like so. So 0 minus our speed to make it negative. Perfect, let's go to the location. I'm going to go up here, right click on the speed of the location, promote to variable that I'm gonna call location underscore speed. And then I'm going to copy paste it right here. And that's it for the location. Then we go to the zoom. So for the zoom, same thing, right click on the pin, promote to variable, zoom underscore speed. But here we also have the minimum and the maximum of our zoom that we also want to edit in game. So let's promote them to variable. Right click, promote to variable, zoom underscore min. And the same, right click, promote to variable, zoom underscore max. Perfect, that's it for the zoom. Let's go in the tick. So in the tick, we have the interp speed. So we're gonna do the same thing. Right click, promote to variable, zoom underscore interp. Then we can go to the location. Same thing, promote the variable, location underscore interp. And finally, the rotation. So right click, promote the variable, rotation underscore interp. And that's it, we now created a bunch of variables for all of our settings. But now let's make sure we didn't lose any data. So let's compile and then select our variables. Then look on the right side. We still have the 45 for the rotation speed. Same thing for the location speed, so 20. 40 for the zoom, 100 for min, 5000 for max, the interp 255. That's it. So none of the data we entered is lost. We still have everything. Perfect. We can compile, save, and close this blueprint. Okay, so we're now going to do the same thing we did in the last video, which is creating a new tab and linking it to our debug menu. So let's do this. So in the debug menu, in the tabs folder, I'm going to create a new tab. So user interface widget blueprint, which I'm gonna name tab underscore camera, and open it. But actually, before doing this widget, we're going to link it into the debug menu, so I can simply save it for now and go back to entry. And in debug menu, I'm going to open my debug menu. Perfect. Here I'm going to link it to my second tab at the top right here. So I'm going to rename the tab text to camera. And I'm also going to rename the button to button underscore camera. And the text component to text underscore camera. Perfect. Then I have to replace the third child of my widget switcher right here. So I'm going to delete it. So delete my tab to text. And then I'm going to add my new widget. So I'm going to scroll all the way down in the user created and search for tab underscore camera that I'm going to add in my widget switcher. And it's now the third child of my widget switcher. So we have the empty text, the console comment tab, and then the tab camera. Perfect, let's compile, save, and close this widget because we're not gonna need it anymore. Okay, now before we start working on the tabs, we're gonna have to create another widget because we're gonna do the same thing we did in the last video, but instead of having a bunch of buttons stacked on top of each other, we're gonna have a bunch of sliders stacked on top of each other, and they all gonna be the same. So we're going to create a widget that we're going to reuse a bunch of time instead of duplicating it. So let's do this. And I'm actually going to give you a little preview of what I want to do. So I'm going back to entry and I'm going to go back in the pawn. In here, if I select class default at the top, I can see at the top right corner all my variables right here. So we have the rotation speed, and everything. And right beside them, we have all the values, and they are all sliders. So I can slide my values right here to change it. And that's exactly what we're gonna do. So we're gonna have a widget that contains all of our variables stacked on top of each other like this with sliders on the right. So let's do this. I'm going to close the pawn because I don't really need it. And I'm going to go in debug menu widget. Then I can create my new widget, so user interface widget blueprint, which I'm going to name spinbox underscore with name. Because the spinbox component in Unreal doesn't come with a name, so we're gonna append the name too. Let's open that. In here, I don't want to have a canvas panel, so I'm going to delete it, and I'm going to look for an horizontal box instead. I can drop it in the viewport. Then I'm going to add a text for the name of my variable right here. And for the value, I want to use a spin box. So I'm going to look for spin box right there in the input category. Okay, now it looks a bit weird, so I'm going to drag the corner right there all the way to the top to have a nice horizontal line. And it's time to make it pretty. So let's select the text block and go in the top right corner. I'm going to start by adding a padding, so a padding of 2 to add a little bit of offset between the text and the edges. And then I'm going to change the vertical alignment to make it centered, like so. Then I'm going to go down to the font and change the typeface to regular instead of bold, and I'm actually going to change the size to 10 instead of 24. And that's it for the text, so let's select the spin box and go in the top right corner, change the padding to 2 also, and make the size to fill instead of auto, so it takes the whole space. But I don't want it to take the whole vertical space also, because if there's a ton of space like this, it's going to be a bit weird. So I'm going to change the vertical alignment to centered, like so. Perfect. Then to see how it looks, I'm going to add a value in the spin box, so let's say 5. And then if we want to see the slider, we have to change the minimum and maximum slider value, which are zeros by default. I'm going to keep them to 0 and then 10 for the maximum. So now we see the slider right in the middle, right here. Perfect. And we can now see that the slider by default is white and gray, but I'd like to have it like black and a darker shade of gray if possible. So let's do this. I'm going to go in the style, expand the style. For the background brush, so this is the background, so I'm going to change the tint to black all the way to the bottom. Perfect. Then I can collapse the background brush. And then, since right now the spin box is not active, I'm going to expand the inactive fill brush, and I'm going to change the tint to a darker gray. So let's say this gray right here. Okay. And then I can collapse the inactive fill brush. In my case, I want to have the same colors if the background is hovered or not, so I'm going to copy the background brush and paste it on the hovered background brush. And I want the same thing for the fill brush, so I'm going to copy the inactive fill brush and paste it on the active fill brush, like so. So we have black, black, gray, gray. Perfect. Now we can't really see the text anymore, so we're gonna change that, which we can do by changing the foreground color. So let's select it and put it back to white. Perfect. And now the only thing we have to do is to edit that text that is on the spin box, which we can do by scrolling down and go in display and then expand the font. For the typeface, I'm also going to select regular and the size 10. If the text doesn't update in the viewport, you can force it to update by compiling the widget, like so. And the last thing I want to do is to move the text right in the center of the spin box. So let's go right here in the justification, I can make it centered. And it doesn't update, so we can compile to make it update. Perfect. So now the visual is done, we can take a bit of time to rename the component. So let's change the name of the spinbox to spinbox underscore value and change the name of the text to text underscore name. And while we're at it, we can select the text and go in the top right corner and make it a variable because we're gonna need it later. Okay, good, let's compile and save. It's now time to do the logic of our spinbox, which in our case only means to expose all the variables we need to access inside those components. So the text written on our text, and inside the spinbox we have to access the value, the minimum and maximum value, the minimum and maximum slider value, and the min and maximum fractional digits, plus the always use delta snap toggle right here and the delta. So these are all the variables we're gonna expose in our spinbox. So let's go to the graph. In here I'm going to do the exact same thing I did for the console comment button, so I'm going to use the pre-construct event, which means I'm going to delete the other ones. So we're gonna start with the text, so I'm going to get the text name on the left, drag it here, and do a set text on it. To set the text, I'm going to connect it to the construct. Then for the variable, I'm going to right click on the input and promote it to a variable, which I'm going to name name. And that's it for the text. That was easy. Now it's time to do the spinbox, which has a lot of variables. And the first ones we're gonna do is the minimum and maximum slider values. So set min slider value. and set max slider value. I'm going to connect them together and connect it to the set text. Then for both of them, I'm going to use the same variable because it's going to be clearer, I think. So I'm going to go on the left in the variables, I'm going to add a new variable and then name it min max underscore slider. And then I'm going to change the variable type from boolean to vector 2D. So I can search for 2D and get the vector 2D right here. Perfect. Then I grab the variable, drop it on the graph. Then I can right click on the blue pin and click on split struct pin, like so. Then I can use the X for the minimum and the Y for the maximum. Perfect. Let's do something a little bit similar for the value. So I'm going to copy paste the spin box value right here. And I'm going to do a set min value and a set max value, which I'm going to connect like so and like so. Then I need another vector 2D, so let's create a new vector 2D, which I'm going to name min max underscore value. And then grab it in the graph, split the struct, connect the X to the minimum and the Y to the maximum. Perfect. Then let's do the next variable. So I'm going to copy the spin box value again, paste it here and do a set value. Set value. Connect it to the previous one. And then we're simply going to promote it to a variable. So right click on the new value, promote it to a variable and name it value. Perfect. Then we're going to do the fractional digits. So let's copy the spin box, paste it here, do a set min frac digits and set max frac digits, which I'm going to connect again. And here, even if they are not floats, we're still gonna use a vector 2D because it makes more sense to me. So let's create a new variable, which is a vector 2D, which I'm gonna name min max fract digit. And then I can get it, split the pins, connect the X to the minimum, and connect the Y to the maximum. Unreal creates a conversion nodes for us. Perfect. Let's go to the next variable. So I'm going to copy the spin box value again, and I'm going to do a set delta snap. Like so, connected to the previous one. Right click on the bool and promote to a variable, which I'm going to name it always snap to delta. And it's time for the last one, so copy the spin box again and do a set delta and take that one. Connect it to the previous one. Right click on delta, promote to variable and name it delta. Perfect! And then we have to make all these variables editable in editor. So I'm going to go back on the left side and I'm going to open all these yellow eyes right there. So open, 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 open. Perfect. Let's compile, save, and go back in the designer view. Here I'm going to go on the left and select my spin box. And I'm actually going to reduce the size of the widget again because it went back up. And then I'm going to zoom on it. Perfect. Here on the top right corner, I can change my variable. So for the name, I'm going to name it spin box. Then for the min max slider, I'm going to use 0 and 10, I'd say. And then min max value, same thing, 0, 10. The default value will be 5, which updated the slider, so that's good. Then for the fractional digits, I'm going to use 0 and 0. I'm going to always snap to delta, and the delta is going to be 1. Perfect, we can now compile and save, and this widget is now ready to be used in our tab. Good! And it's now time to go use this widget in the tab camera. So let's go in there, and the first thing I'm going to do is delete the canvas panel. And I'm going to replace it with a vertical box, so vertical box in the canvas panel. Then I'm going to add all my sliders to it, so I'm going to scroll all the way down and grab a spin box with name right there. And I'm going to scale down the widget like so. Okay. So now we need as many sliders as we have the variable in our pawn. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 variables in the pawn right here. So we're going to need 8 sliders. So I'm going to duplicate it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. And then I'm going to rename the components. So spinbox with name. Instead of that, I'm going to write spinbox with name underscore lock speed. Then I'm going to name it underscore lock interp, then underscore rot speed, rot interp, zoom speed, zoom interp, zoom min, and zoom max. Perfect. And we can now change the text of our sliders, but instead of typing lock speed, lock interp, rot speed, rot interp, zoom speed, zoom interp, zoom max, zoom min, I'm simply going to add categories in between them. So I'm going to go all the way back up right here and drag a text in my vertical box, which I'm going to change it for location. Then I'm going to add another one in between the lock and the rot, and I'm going to write rotation. And finally a third one that I'm going to place before the zoom and name it zoom. And right now they are a bit big, so I'm going to select all of them and go in the size and change it for 16, I say. Okay, good, we can now focus on the spin box. So for the first one, I'm going to name it speed. For the min and max slider, I'm going to write 10 and 50, I think. For the min max value, it doesn't really matter, so 0 and 1000. For the current value, maybe 30, I think it was in the pound. Then for the min and max fractional digit, I'm gonna make 0, 0. I'm not gonna check always snap to delta, and the delta I'm gonna write 5. Then we can go to the next one, which I'm going to name interp. For this one, the slider is gonna be between 0 and 10. The min and max value doesn't really matter, so 0 and 1000. For the current value, I think it's 5. Then the fractional digit, I'm gonna make 2. Then I'm going to uncheck the snap to delta, and for the delta, I'm going to write 0.1. And we can go to the next one. I'm going to name it speed. For the slider, this one's going to be between 15 and 90. For the min-max value is going to be between 0 and 180. The current value is 45. The min and max fractional digit are going to be 0 and 0. I'm not going to snap to delta, but the delta is going to be 15. And we can go to the next one. For the name, it's going to be interp. The min and max slider are going to be 0 and 10. The min max value are going to be 0 and 100. The current value is 5. The fractional digit are 2 and 2. I'm not going to snap to delta, and the delta is going to be 0.1. And we can go to the next one. So for the zoom, it's going to be speed. Then the min max slider are going to be 0 and 200. The min max value are going to be 0 and 1000, I think. Then the current value is 40, the min-max digit are going to be 0 and 0, always snap false, and the delta is going to be 5. And we can go to the next one, so interp. Min-max slider is going to be 0 and 5 this time, the min-max value is going to be 0 and 10, the min-max value are going to be 0 and 100, the value is going to be 2, I think, and then the frac digit is going to be 2 and 2. We're not gonna always snap to delta, and for the delta is gonna be 0.1. And then we go to the next one, so I'm going to name it min. In this one, the min max slider is gonna be 0 and 5000. The min max value is gonna be 0 and 10,000. The value is gonna be 100. The min max digit is gonna be 0 and 0, not always snap to delta, and the delta is gonna be 50. And for the last one, I'm going to name it max. The min-max slider are going to be 5,000 and 10,000. The min-max value are going to be 0 and let's say 100,000. Doesn't really matter. The value is going to be 5,000 right now. And then for the fractional digit 0 and 0, not always snap, and the delta is 50. Okay, that's done. Let's compile and save. So we have all of our slider done. Finally, before doing the logic, we can go see how it looks in game. So go back in entry and press play. And now if I click on my camera tab, I can see all my sliders right here. They are a bit small and really weird, so we're gonna fix that before we jump onto the logic. So let's stop and go back in the tab camera. And to fix that, I'm simply going to use the same kind of expandable area we used in the tab console command. So let's go get it. I'm going to go back in entry, go in my debug menu tabs, and open tab console commands. Here I'm going to select the root, so the border, and I'm going to copy it, so Ctrl C. And then I go back in my tab camera, and before I paste, I'm going to make sure that I saved my changes, because Unreal doesn't always like it when you paste widgets, and it often crashes. So let's just save to be sure. And then select your vertical box and Ctrl V to paste. Here we go, we now have the console command right there. So now the first thing to do is to remove everything we don't need, so I'm going to scroll all the way down on the left right here and select all my console command components and delete them. And then now that the vertical box is empty, I'm going to select all my new components right here, so all my new spin boxes, and I'm going to drag them into the vertical box. Here we go. Then I'm going to change the title text, so from console command to maybe variables, like so. And I'm going to also change the expandable area, so expandable area underscore variables. Perfect. And then we still have an empty vertical box at the top of our hierarchy, so we can simply right click on it, replace with child. And now to see how it's gonna look in game, we can go in the top right corner, replace the fill screen by desired, which is better than what we had before. Let's compile and save and go see. Go back in entry, press play, select the camera tab. Here we go, we now have all of our sliders. The max slider is at the top. Okay, let's bring it back down. But yeah, other than that, everything seems fine. We can scroll and everything. It's not pretty. Everything is a bit too black right now, so we're gonna have to adjust all that. But for now, it's good enough, and we can go to the logic. But first, let's go back in the tab camera, grab our spin box at the top, and move it all the way to the bottom. So it's at the right. Okay, perfect. Compile, save. Okay, so for the logic, when the user changes any of these values right here, we want to feed them directly to the camera to affect its behavior in-game. So the first step will be to know when the user changed one of these values. And this is easy. We can simply use an event. So I can go on the right and scroll all the way to the bottom to find my event. Oh, I don't have one. And this is because this is a blueprint that I created myself. So we need to also create our own event that will show up right here. So let's do this. Let's go back in the spin box. In here I can select my spin box and go all the way to the bottom. Here I have all my events. So when the user changes this value, all these events will be called. And in our case, the event that we're interested in is the onValue changed. So click on the plus right there, which creates the event. Now we have to find a way to feed that event to every places in the game that uses this spin box. So all of these. And the way we do that is by using a callback, or the way it's called in Blueprint, an event dispatcher, right here on the left. So we have the event dispatchers. Let's create a new one. Then we have to name it, so onValue changed. And then we can take it and drag it into the graph. Here we have a new menu with a bunch of options. And in this case, we want to use the call. So let's click on call. And then we can connect it to our event. So now every time the user changes a value in the spin box, this event is called, which then call our callback, which can be used everywhere else. Okay, good. But it will also be useful to have access to the new value of the spin box right here. So let's feed it to the callback. To do that, we're gonna select the callback on the left and go in the inputs. And at the right, we can click on new parameters, which creates us a new variable. We can name it, so value, and we can change the variable type to a float. And we can see in the graph that the callback updated. Perfect. But if your node didn't update properly and the variable type or name are wrong, because it happens pretty often with callbacks, you can just right click on the node and click on refresh nodes, which should refresh the node. But if it didn't work, what I will suggest is to compile the blueprint, delete that event, and go get it back on the left, and click on call again, and then reconnect everything. And finally, we have to connect the in value. So let's do that. Click compile, save, and we should now have access to that callback in all of our spin boxes. So let's go see. In our tab camera, if I select my first spin box and go all the way to the bottom, now I have my onValue changed event right here that I can implement. So let's do that. Click on plus. And now we have to do it for all the other ones. So go back in designer, select the second one, scroll all the way to the bottom, and implement the function. And again, next one, scroll plus. Again, next one, scroll plus. Again, next one, scroll plus. And again. And again. And the last one. Here we go. We now have all the events we need. Perfect. Okay, it's now time to feed all this data to our camera. So the first step is to access it, which is actually not that difficult to do. So I'm just going to go back where we have our three events right here. And in this case, I'm going to delete the tick and the preconstruct, which is only called in-game when the widget is created. So when the widget is created in-game, we want to look into the world and find our pawn. And that's pretty easy to do. We just have to right-click and search for get player pawn. Enter. To use this function, we need to know the index of the player we are interested in. But in our case, the game is single player, so the index is always going to be 0. So that's good. So that means that here we have our pawn. Great. But we can't really use it that way. Because let's say if I want to access all the variable I created in the beginning of the video, so let's say the location speed, well, it doesn't exist. And this is because this pawn is a default pawn, and we have to cast it first. So let's just cast it. Cast to BP pawn. And then we can connect it to the construct. But I can already hear the question, what is a cast? And what does that do? Because it's a pretty frequent question when you're new at programming. So I'm going to try to explain it. In short, a cast is simply asking Unreal if the object right here is of that type. So in our case, we're asking Unreal if the object we're giving it is a BP pawn. So Unreal, is this a BP pawn or not? And that's exactly what it does. If the success pin fires, it means that the object right here is a BP pawn, and otherwise the cast is gonna fail. So this pin's gonna fire. Let's think about it in another way. So let's just think that this function right here, instead of being get player pawn, is just get fruit. So you're asking Unreal to give you a fruit, any kind of fruit. It can be an apple, a pear, an orange, a banana, anything. It's a fruit. That's it. So Unreal gives you a fruit. And then you're casting the fruit to ask Unreal, okay, is this an apple? That's a simple question. Hey Unreal, is this fruit an apple? If it's true, this pin's gonna fire. And it's going to return you everything that makes the fruit an apple. So it's gonna be red, round, shaped like an apple, taste like an apple, with seeds in it, you know, an apple. So then you can have access to all that info. But what if it's not an apple? Well, the cast is gonna fail. And then you can decide if you want to do something about that or not. Most of the time you're probably not gonna do much. But maybe you want to. So let's say you have another cast. Here, can be connected to there. So the first cast failed because this is not an apple. So let's try again. Hey Unreal, is this a banana? If it's true, this pin's gonna fire. And then you're gonna have access to all the things that makes it a banana. So it's gonna be yellow with a peel. It's gonna taste like a banana. And everything else that makes it a banana. But anyway, let's get back to the code. So I'm going to delete that. So right now I'm getting a pawn, any kind of pawn, anything. I'm asking Unreal, okay, is this a BP pawn? Is this my pawn? And if so, this pin is gonna fire. And I'm going to take this output right here and save it into a variable so I can use it later. So let's do that. I'm going to right click on the BP pawn, promote to variable, and type pawn. Perfect. So if the pawn that Unreal gives us is a BP pawn, we're saving it into a variable. Perfect. And then from that pawn, I can have access to all the variable I created at the beginning. So let's search for set speed, for example. And here we have the set location speed, rotation speed, and zoom speed, which is not accessible from a regular pawn because we created them. So here, set speed, we don't have anything. Okay, good. So now if the cast worked, we have our pawn, we can use that. Let's do this. I'm gonna come down, get the pawn, drop it here. And then when the spin box of location speed is updated, I want to set the location speed on my pawn. So set speed location. And then I can connect them together. Then do the same thing for the lock interp. So get the pawn, set interp lock, and connect them together. And again, for the rotation speed, set rot speed, and connect them. Same thing, set rot interp, and connect them. Then zoom speed, set zoom speed, set zoom interp, set zoom min, and set zoom max. Perfect. It's now feeding all these variables into our pawn when the user changes them. Perfect. Let's go try that. Compile, save. Go back in entry, press play. Here, if you have the log open, you're gonna see a bunch of errors like that. So we're gonna fix them. Just press stop, and here it should open the message log. And you're gonna see that window pretty often. So it's time to get used to it. So let's check that error together. Blueprint runtime error. Okay, we don't care about that. Access is none, trying to read property pawn. And then it tells you where it happened. Okay, good. Let's click on the link at the end of the line. Set location speed. So the problem happened here. What does it say? It says access is none, trying to read property pawn. Which means that the pawn right here is empty. It's nothing. It doesn't exist. This variable here is invalid right now. And it's trying to set the location speed of something that doesn't exist, which is obviously not possible. So let's figure out what happens. I'm going to close the message log. If I look at my cast and everything, I have the construct, which takes the pawn in the game, cast it to the pawn, and set it into the pawn. And then we are using that pawn when the spin box is updated by the player. Perfect. But where's the problem? Well, let's try something. I'm going to select the set here and press F9 on my keyboard. which adds a big red dot right there, which is a breakpoint. Unreal is going to pause the game when this node is called right here. And then we're going to do the same thing with the pawn at the top. So I'm going to select the set pawn right there and press F9. We have another breakpoint. Let's compile, save, and go play the game again. Play. And as soon as I press play, the breakpoint breaks on the location speed right here. And I can see the value of my pawn, which is none at the moment. Okay, that's weird. Why did it break? I didn't change any value in the spin box. Why did it break? Okay, just to be curious, let's press resume at the top. Okay, it breaks again. That's weird. Okay, let's press resume again. Okay, now it sets my pawn. It's a bit late though, because this event was already called. That's weird. Because the construct should happen before all the other events. But it's not the case right there. And that's actually something I really don't like about spin boxes. And it's that they are calling the onValueChanged event all the time. I mean, no, not all the time, but at the first frame of the game. As soon as they appear in-game, they call that event, even if the player didn't change them, because the engine changed the value and then called that function. But in our case, it's really annoying, because it means we have to deal with things like this. I'm going to press stop right there, and close the message log. So how do we fix that? Well, we have two options. One that is cleaner and one that is simpler in my opinion. And in this case, I'm not gonna use the cleaner one, but I'm still going to explain it. So the cleaner option will be to, before setting the location speed on the pawn, check if the pawn is valid. So, is valid. And if true, you set the location speed. But then we will have to do it for all the other spin box in our game, all of them. And this is just a small chunk. So that's not what I want to do. Instead, we're gonna do a little hack to go around the default behavior of the spin box. And to do that, I'm going to go back in the spin box. Then here next to the onValueChanged event, I'm going to create the construct event. So construct event construct. And then I'm going to add a little delay. So delay. And the value of the delay should be pretty small. So let's say 0.05. And what I'm gonna do is put a gate in between the onValueChanged event called by Unreal and our callback to prevent our callback from being called at the beginning of the game. So let's do that. So I'm going to drag it right here and search for gate. Right there. In between Unreal's event and our callback. So what that function does is simply blocking the code. So it's never gonna fire the exit pin unless we open the gate first. And in our case, since the onValueChange is called super fast at the beginning of the game before the construct, we're simply gonna call the construct, wait a little tiny bit, just a little tiny bit, then open the gate. So the first few frames, Unreal is gonna call that event, which is going to go through the gate, but it's gonna be blocked because the gate is closed. And then later on, if we change the value of the spin box, it's still going to go through the gate, but since we opened it right here, it's gonna call our callback as expected. Okay, let's go try that. Compile, save. Go back in the level, press play. And here that's perfect. The first breakpoint that breaks is the pawn set. Good, I can press F9 to remove the breakpoint and press resume. The other breakpoint didn't break, so let's go in the camera to see if it still works. I'm going to change the speed right here, and the other breakpoint braked. Okay, good. So that means that the code works as expected. Good, I'm going to press F9 to remove the breakpoint and press resume again. And then I can change all these values to affect the camera in-game. So let's say if I change my speed to super slow, I'm super slow, and fast, super fast. And same thing for the zoom. I can make me zoom out, and force me to zoom back in, and change the speed of the zoom, and everything. Perfect. So we can now use all those sliders to affect the camera in-game. But there's just one last thing to do, and it is to use the default settings that are set in our pawn to set those sliders at the beginning of the game. So let's just stop and go back in the tab.
Okay, so now that we have all of our spin box working and feeding the values to the pawn, it will be also nice to update these spin box at the beginning of the game with the values that were already set on the pawn. Because right now, let's say if I go back to designer, the default values are set to the ones that are entered right here manually. But if you change the values in the pawn, they won't be updated, and that's not good. So let's make sure to update all these values at the beginning of the game with the values that are set in the pawn. So let's do this. I'm going to go back in the graph. And I'm going to go back in the construct, because this is where we get access to the pawn, and I'm going to get the pawn right here. Then I need all the variables that are already inside it, so get lock speed, get lock interp, get rot speed, rot interp, get zoom speed, get zoom interp, get zoom min, and finally get zoom max. Okay, perfect. Now we also need all the corresponding spin boxes. So in the same order, I'm going to get lock speed, lock interp, rot speed, rot interp, zoom speed, zoom interp, zoom in, and zoom max. Here we go. Now we have to connect all of them together. And since I don't want to drag 10,000 links in between them, I'm going to use a for each loop. So I'm going to loop through all my spin boxes and all my variables and set them together. So let's do this. I'm going to drag from one of my spin boxes and search for make array. And then add as many pins as I need and connect all of them. Like so. Now we have to do the same thing for the variables, so I'm going to simply copy the make array and paste it right here. You can see that it turned gray because the variable type changed back to a wildcard, so we can connect anything to it. And right now we're going to connect our floats to it. So floats, 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 floats. And it's really important to have the same indexes in both arrays. So if you have your location speed at indexes 0 in the first array, you need to also use the index 0 for the spin box of the location speed. Same thing for all the variables. So rotation speed in my case is index 2. So my spin box of rotation speed is index 2. Okay, now I'm going to switch them around. So I'm going to have my spin boxes at the top, like so. And I'm going to create my for each loop. So drag from the array of spin boxes and search for each loop, which I'm going to connect after the set pawn. And then we're going to use this index right here to get access to all the floats that we have in our second array. So to do that, I'm going to drag from the float array, search for a get, and I'm going to choose get a ref, the last. And then I'm going to drag from the array index into the get. So now with our for each loop, we have access to the current spin box, so index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then from the get right here, we have access to the same index in our second array. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Perfect. We just have to connect them together right now. But before we can do that, we have to go back in the spin box and change a little something. So let's compile and save for now and go back in the spin box. And just to show you, I'm going to go back in Designer and select the root. So here on the right side, we have the value, which is a variable. And we also have the spin box right there. These values are linked together during the construct right now. But since the value of my variable right here is going to change by code now, we want to also update the spin box at the same time. So we really have to link them together. And that's what we're gonna do. So let's go back in the graph and go in the pre-construct right here and search for where you're setting the value right there. And what I'm gonna do is select those two nodes, so the spin box value and the set value function. And then I'm going to right click on one of them and choose collapse to function, like so. And I'm going to name it set value. We're still gonna leave it there because we want to set the value of the spin box during the pre-construct, so that's good. And then I'm going to double click to open the function. And in here, we're still setting the value of our spin box, but we're also going to set the value of our variable. So I'm going to drag the variable from the left, so the value variable right here, and do a set. And then I'm going to connect it before the set value on the spin box. And then I just have to link it from the variable that comes as input. And just to have one line, I'm going to drag out of the set value into the new value of the spin box, like so. So now every time this function is called, we are setting the variable and the spin box. Perfect. Let's compile, save, and go back in the tab. And we can now simply call this function inside of the loop. So drag from the array element right here and search for set value. And make sure to select the function, not the variable right now, because we want to update both the variable and the spin box. So we have to call the function that does both. So set value, the function. Connect it to the for each loop. And then connect the float from the array. And that's it, it should work now. So let's compile, save, and I'm actually going to go back in Designer and change those values right here, just to show you that it works. So for the value of the speed, I'm going to write 10, and the interp, I'm going to write, let's say 200, doesn't matter. Then I'm going to compile, save. And then if I go back to entry and press play, then open my camera tab, I can see that my speed is back to 20, which is the value that was set in the pawn, and my interp speed is back to 5, which is also the value that is set in the pawn. Perfect, that works. And that's pretty much it for that tab, finally. I'm just gonna take a bit of time off camera to update the visual of the tab and make it prettier. This time I'm not gonna make a time lapse, I'm simply gonna jump at the end and just show you how it looks. And that's it. So I'm gonna see you in 3, 2, 1. So here I added a second expandable area to contain my controls. So I just wrote a bunch of text that explain the controls of the game. And then I have my variables. And in here I didn't change much. I pretty much just changed the size of the text here and there. And I added a few lines in between the categories and around the spin box. So it's more clear where it starts and where it ends. And I'm going to show you how it looks in the widget. So I'm going to stop it and go back in the tab. Here as the root, I added a vertical box that contains our two borders. So one for the controls and one for the variables. And for the border that contains the controls, it's just a basic expandable area with a bunch of text. So text 1, text 2, text 3 right here. And then for the variables, here I added a few lines in between, which are simply images. So you can find them right there on the left. So I dragged it in the vertical box and then I made sure that it stretches from left to right. And I also changed the color and opacity to something that is gray, dark gray. And finally, for the outline around the spin box, I did that directly in the spin box. So let's go in there. And I simply added a border around my spin box. So if we zoom right here, we see the spin box right there and we have a border around it. And for the brush setting, I simply changed the brush color to something that is a dark gray also. And that's pretty much it for this video. Don't forget to submit your changes to Source 3 and I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye!